talk with the Trail of Wonder series. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Father Trail was sick, so you got me. So I'm a backup emergency speaker. So Father Trail should theoretically resume his duties next week doing stuff. So I'll be happy to fill in for Father Trail for you this evening. And the theme of this evening's talk is, what if my life had meaning or purpose? And it's one of those great questions, that comes up every now and again. Am I doing the right thing? What is this all for? Why am I doing this? Why even go about this? Why even do anything? Or why do I have to suffer? Or why does this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? And these great questions. What is the point of all this? What is the point of all of this? And I think it's a great question, but I want to start somewhere else. So recently, I was putting together 2 bags for my room, and I'd ordered them online. They were coming from online, and they arrived. And when I first got them, I opened the first box, and the instructions were in Chinese. And I'm struggling, and I was like, you know what? I'm pretty smart. I can try putting this together. So I just started working on it, and it's just not coming together. So I'm like, maybe I'm missing something. So I opened the second box, and in the second box were actual instructions in English. So I was like, oh, they're coming. And it started to come to place and come to make sense. And I think we can say, well, our lives don't fully make sense unless we're looking at it from the Maker's instructions. What does the Maker make me for? And seeing our lives from that perspective. Like we can't know what we're supposed to do with our lives unless we know what story we're in, whose story we're in. So if I don't know whose story I'm in, I can't really address my life. I can't know what I'm supposed to do with it. I can't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I can't know what I'm here for unless I put my story, my life into a context, into its proper context, what the Maker wants. Otherwise, it's all just foreign language. It's all just Chinese. I can't get it. It doesn't make any sense. But only when we put our lives in context and we get the instructions that speak our language and that show us what we're supposed to do. And there's a great biblical example. If you don't know who this is, this guy right here, you may have heard of him. He's Moses. And this is a basic talk, so you don't have to have any biblical knowledge. So Moses was the figure who will eventually free the Israelites. But he didn't start off that way. He was drawn from the water, he had this miraculous birth, and he was raised in the Pharaoh's household. And as you notice, it doesn't look like he's raised in the Pharaoh's household right now. Things have gone wrong. He saw an Egyptian beating an Israelite, and he got so enraged that he murdered him. And then after murdering him, he covered him in the sand, which is a bad idea in a desert place, because, sand moves. It's a windy area. And so he's so ashamed he has to flee from Pharaoh. He wanders around, and he ends up going into the desert, and then across the desert, he becomes a shepherd. And he thinks, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shepherd. And till he meets the burning bush. And that burning bush is a bush that won't be consumed. It's a bush that is on fire and yet not consumed. And he said, I have to go see this sight. It's a way of God getting his attention. God gets his attention with this burning bush, and then he speaks to him from the burning bush. This bush that's on fire and not consumed. And he enters into conversation with him. The conversation goes like this. Meanwhile, Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. I love that. He was tending the flock. Leading the flock beyond the wilderness, he came to the mountain of God, Horeb. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him as fire flaming out of a bush. When he looked, although the bush was on fire, it was not being consumed. So Moses decided, I must turn aside and look at this remarkable sight. Why does the bush not burn up? When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called out to him from the bush, Moses, Moses. answered, "Here I am." God said, "Do not come near. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. I am the God of your father," he continued, "the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob." Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. But the Lord said, "I have witnessed the affliction of my people in Egypt, and have heard their cry against their taskmasters, so I know well that they are suffering. Therefore I've come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and to lead them up from that land into a good and spacious land flowing with milk and honey, the country of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, and I've seen how the Egyptians have oppressed them. Now go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" God answered, "I will be with you." Continues on from there. God sees what we don't see. Sometimes we see our failures. Sometimes we're like, "Oh, I'm just tending sheep. I've given up on Israelite liberation. I murdered somebody, and maybe God wants me to do that again." No. I will be with you. And first, Anderson's relationship with him calls him by name. Moses, Moses, God who knows us. Before we even meet him, he already knows us. God who sees us, and sees our potential that we can't even see. God who knows us, a God who sees us, a God who has a design, a plan for us. And that's the God we meet, the God we long for, but also that sense of purpose that we're longing for in our hearts. We may not see it, we may not know it, we may see our own failures, we may see our brokenness, we may see lots of things that don't go always correct or right, but God sees the truth itself. God knows our hearts. He sees what we're destined for. And he says to each one of us again, "I will be with you." Right after this passage, Moses said, just this dialogue, and says to him, "Who are you?" And God says, "I am who am." Tell them that I am sent me to thee. There's a real relationship and exchange there. God reveals himself. And they enter. It says, "I want you to enter into worship with me, enter into relationship with me, into an ongoing relationship with me." That deeper, deeper relationship that we're called to. A deeper, deeper longing in our hearts to be known, to know God, and to enter into relationship with him. If you ask people the question about what's the purpose of life, you get all sorts of questions. We end up questioning, and we're like, I don't know, like, why am I here? And then you get some of the, basic answers. I'd say, well, I'm here to do my job. I'm here to be a priest, I'm here to be a lawyer, I'm here to be a doctor, I'm here to do, I really feel called to do a job. That's all well good. Or you can say, some people would say, I'm here to find a spouse, to raise a family, I'm here to love my family, I'm here to be with my family. And again, none of these are bad. Or maybe you'll say it's just to be passionate. I'm going to find something that I'm really passionate about, I'm going to find something that I can pour myself into. I'm going to be an artist, or a poet, or a musician, or I really love go-karts, so I'm going to be the best go-kart, or Legos, or whatever. You're passionate. Some people might answer as passion. Or even they might say, just doing good. We're here to do good. But I think there's a flaw, and all of these are good, but they're not fully answering the question, why am I here? Because with a job, what happens when you lose that job? Do you suddenly not have a purpose? Do you suddenly not have value? Well, I was a plumber for 40 years, I was an electrician, and now I can't do that anymore. Do I lose that value? To lose that purpose. Well, or what happens? What happens when my spouse dies? Or let's say our kids grow up, and I no longer need to take care of 3 kids. I no longer need to do that stuff. And maybe they're not going to have grandkids. Does that mean that I don't have purpose or meaning in my life? Or maybe you weren't ever married. Does that mean my life is less valuable than somebody else who was married? And I don't think we can say that. And what about, the passionate thing? Well, what happens if tomorrow I can't paint anymore? I can't play football anymore? Or, the thing that I want, that I love so much, I can't do it anymore. I got a bad back now. I can't play basketball anymore. Or, I get bored with it. I don't have that creative juice anymore. Does my life suddenly not have purpose? Suddenly have meaning? Even with doing good, I think what we lack here is the people who are being served also have value. It's not just the people on this side of the otherwise it would just be they have value and these ones don't. But that's not true. God values each and every one of us. And each of us, in our brokenness, in our goodness, has value and meaning and purpose. And each of these things, as good as they are, I'm not disparaging having a family, I'm not disparaging having a job, I'm not disparaging having a passion. They are good things. But what happens when you mess up at work? Does that mean suddenly you're bad? What happens when you mess up with your relationship, with your husband, with your wife? Does that suddenly mean you have less value? Does that mean that you're not fulfilling your purpose? Or your passion, or your whatever? But our meaning does not come from what we do, how much we earn, how much taxes we pay, our families, our passions, how much, or even how much good we do, or our impact on society. As good as those things might be objectively, especially we might want to say that about ourselves, our meaning, our value, does not come from these things, as good as they might be. How much good I do. This person impacted society in this way. This person was a great scientist. But that doesn't define me. Ultimately, it goes back to relationship with God that defines us. Look at the architect's plans. Look at the drawings. How does God see me? How does God look at me? I'm a beloved daughter of God. I'm a beloved son of God, no matter what. And that relationship tells us who we are and whose we are, and guides us into seeing the purpose for our lives. And no matter what happens, even when I'm fallen down, even when I'm broken, I still have meaning, I still have purpose. Even when I get sick, even when I can't do what I used to do, even when I have to retire and give that up, even when my kids are grown, even when the relationship falls apart, even when I mess something up, I'm still loved, I'm still cared for, I still have value, I still have meaning. I may not be paying taxes, I may not be having, I may not have a job, or I may not have a relationship, but my life has meaning, my life has value, and I'm known and I'm loved by God. When we see ourselves as known and loved by God, when we start with that relationship, we realize that I'm a beloved daughter, I'm a beloved son, then we can go and claim those other things. I can then be the best wife I can be. I can be the best husband I can be. I can be the best grandfather I can be. I can be the best volunteer I can be. I can give passionately to my art form, or to my passions. But it starts with that relationship. Because we always will fail in the other things. When we go back to babies, we're going to mess up at work. So if we define ourselves by our job, we're going to mess up sometime. If we define ourselves only by our relationship, you're going to mess up with your husband, you're going to mess up with your wife, you're going to mess up with your kids. You're going to say the wrong thing. We're going to mess up at an art project, we're going to mess up volunteering. But we're going to say the wrong things, we're going to get angry at somebody, we're going to purpose, our identity is grounded in something deeper, in something better. And this isn't what is defined by the architect's plans, by the creator's plans. When we define ourselves by that relationship, everything comes into place, comes into view. God's plan for us is to encounter Him, to have an intimacy with Him. This is from a Protestant pastor, but it's so good. In that sense of God's plan for us is to have an encounter with Him, to have intimacy with Him. Moses, I want you to go and do this. I have called you by name. I have called you by name. But even besides that, just be here with me. Enter into relationship with me. Enter into worship with me. Know who I am. Know that I am. And then let's get into that suffering. Why do I suffer? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why does this have to happen? It's not so much that God wants bad things to happen. God loves everyone. He permits bad things to happen. And sometimes when we are loved, even our sufferings, even our failures can be put into a different perspective and we can see them as redeemable. Like, God didn't want that accident to happen. He didn't want that suffering to happen. He didn't want the bad thing to happen. But He can use it. He uses it. He doesn't allow it to just stay where it is. I don't know if you're familiar with jazz. But I like to think of God as a great jazz conductor. So the thing about jazz is the notes aren't written. Like it's a lot of improvisation. Like they might start with one riff and then like this note gets added in and then they suddenly feel in here and so suddenly it goes this way and that way and moves around. There's a lot of ad-libbing and improvisation and weaving in and out of different strings. And that's one of the images I have for God is this great jazz musician, this great jazz conductor. He weaves in our brokenness. He weaves in our sadness. He weaves in our low notes and our brokenness. And He says, I'm going to redeem that low note. I'm going to make it so that the low note isn't the only note. I'm going to put that low note into the context of my story. I'm going to put that low note, I'm going to put that brokenness into the context of my redeeming the world. I'm going to put your low notes, I'm going to put your suffering into the context of my redemptive love. And so we can suffer out of love for somebody else. We can say, this is my way of showing you that I love you. Even if it means sitting for 3 hours with you through this painful thing. I'm going to be there because I love you. And that's a redemptive thing. Or I'm going to do this, I'm going to sacrifice this thing out of love for you. I'm going to give you back to God because I love you. I lost you, the love of my life, but I'm going to turn you back over to God because that's what's best for you. And because I love you. Or again, the redemption of the cross, that sense of I'm going to suffer this with and for you because I love you. And so that sense of putting it in the perspective of the architect's plans, and God, the great jazz musician, God who weaves in our low notes, our bad notes, our mistakes, our missteps, He's able to weave it into His song, into His rhythm, into His music, and make it sound beautiful. Make it sound, so it's not so much everything has a purpose, because if everything has a purpose, that means God wanted you to suffer. Or it means that God wanted you to have that pain. But I think it's more that God uses the bad notes and brings good out of them. God uses our low points and brings good out of them. He doesn't let the low note be the only note. He doesn't let our brokenness be the end of the story. He doesn't let our pain be the end of the story. But He puts it into the context and gives it a purpose, assigns it a purpose, so that it can be transformational, it can be transformative, it can be life-giving. It can lead to Him. And so as we look at our lives, as we look at everything from the moment of our birth in our mother's wombs, as we look at our lowest points, as we look at our sufferings, as we look at our failures, when we put ourselves in context, when we look at the plans, we say, I'm loved, I'm good, I'm in a relationship with God who loves me and wants to be in a relationship with me. Then we can suffer. Then we can have our brokenness redeemed. Then we can know why we're here. We're here to know God, to love God, to share that love with somebody else. That's the architect's plan. That's what God wants for us. To be like Moses, called by name, to then have somebody else meet him. So that's the end of my talk. A little early. But I do have some questions for you guys. So maybe if you guys huddle up in your, and so maybe if you ladies are joining them back there, and then you guys want to huddle up and take some of these questions. But before we do that, actually, I'm going to introduce Willa. Willa is going to share a little bit of her story and her witness talk. So Willa is working for us with the Archdiocese of Chicago as part of our implementation team. I forget your formal title.
Renewal Senior Coordinator.
She's the Renewal Senior Coordinator from the Archdiocese of Chicago. So I'll introduce Willa, and she'll share a little bit of her story.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to share a little bit about my personal story. This is my testimony. My husband and I grew up in New Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, located in the Inglewood community. My husband was a Boy Scout, and I was in the children's choir. We didn't actually meet until high school when both of our families moved to the Calumet Heights community. But there we attended James H. Bowen High School on the east side, and we met. We attended the same college. We were married several years after my husband, Delandis, graduated from SIU in Carbondale. We were blessed with 2 children. Our son, Delandis II, was born the year after we married, and our daughter was born 6 years later. We were happy and felt blessed. We purchased our home in the Calumet Heights community and enrolled both of our children at St. Albie Catholic School. Several years later, my husband and I converted to Catholicism, and our family, as a school family, we joined St. Albie Catholic Church. Life was good. We both worked hard, volunteering at the school and the parish. Life was going along smoothly until our son was diagnosed with a rare form of kidney cancer at the age of 20. His prognosis was he was given 3 to 4 months to live. During his illness and eventual death 10 months later, in March of 2001, my faith in God was put to its biggest test. I was angry with God right after he died. I felt that God had abandoned me and my family in what I believe was our greatest hour of need. I was unable to attend Mass for at least a year. Every time I walked into the sanctuary, I relived the funeral Mass for my son. I was broken and empty and felt abandoned by God. My grief counselor and I met every Wednesday for a year to discuss the literature that she provided and to help me move forward in my walk of faith. She helped me to return to God, to be strengthened and comforted during the difficult months following my son's death. One of the first books that she gave me to read was When Bad Things Happen to Good People by Rabbi Harold S. Kushner. This book asks the question, why do the righteous suffer? It led me directly to Job in the Old Testament. I searched to find the answer from God as to why had this happened to me and my family. I joined a support group for parents who lost children. Compassionate Friends is an international, nonprofit, self-help support organization for bereaved parents, siblings, and grandparents. They are a non-religious group and have no membership fees. I was a member of the Southside chapter of Compassionate Friends for 5 years. I served as associate chapter leader for 2 years and chapter leader for 3 years. I attended regional conferences that offered training and coordinating and maintaining a local chapter. I found that helping others to cope with the loss of their child or sibling helped me to heal from the loss of my beloved son and inspired me to dedicate my life to helping others. The desire to complete my bachelor's degree at DePaul and to pursue a master's degree from Catholic Theological Union was born out of my involvement with Compassionate Friends. I was strengthened by my personal experience with the bereavement support group, but felt that the limitations that were imposed on me from working within a non-religious organization left out the most important part of dealing with suffering and loss. That would be a relationship with God. Because I was able to return to God to be strengthened following my son's death, I felt a calling from God to prepare myself to become a vessel for helping others. My pastor at St. Albee Church encouraged me to return to school and to prepare myself to become a lay minister. During the years that followed my son's death, my entry into Catholic Theological Union as a scholar in September 2012, I studied the Old Testament story of Job intensely, still looking to understand the why. Life was taking a turn, and I was on board for the ride. I found that the Bible doesn't give us a simple answer to the question of human suffering. We're left to do the work and wrestle with God through our theology, personal experiences, and prayers. We have to build a model for ourselves that will help us to endure all suffering, deserved and undeserved. One thing that I can say, based on my own experience with suffering, is that once we endure suffering and move forward to rebuild our lives, we are never the same person as we were before that experience. Job was irrevocably changed by his suffering, and he began the second phase of his life with a new perspective. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Ella, and thank you for giving a wonderful testimony. And you'll hopefully meet Willa more and more over the coming weeks and months. And